We pick up our study of the Gospel of Matthew with just one verse in Matthew chapter 13, and we are going to be looking at verse 10. I'm going to be reading from the American Standard Version. The American Standard Version was a not early, 19th, 20th century revision of the King James Version. Verse 10 of chapter 13 of Matthew. And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? The disciples came to Jesus with a relatively simple question. They wanted to know why Jesus was using parables to teach the people. Now, notice what is said in this question. Jesus taught in parables. The question they asked of Jesus grew out of what they sensed, felt, and experienced. They had seen Jesus use parables to teach and wanted to know why this way and no other. Why didn't Jesus, give a philosophical discourse? Why didn't Jesus write a book? He taught in parables. Jesus, we can answer the first question by noting the type of world that Jesus lived in. Understand that the printing press in Europe was not invented until the 1450s. There is some reason to believe that the Chinese had some technology before this that was further developed and further enhanced by what happened in Europe. In other words, long story short, reply is that the printing press did not exist in the ancient world. Printing was laborious. You had to print copies one by one. And so you had to have scribes produce each copy individually. One of the things that also had yet to be invented at the time of Jesus was paper. Now, there were two mediums for writing. One was papyrus, which is basically, simple story, a swamp plant, in which you cut, and you can cut it in such a way that you get a number of sheets and you paste these together to create a larger sheet. Or what was a little newer, but would especially be used in Europe as you move into the Middle Ages, because they did not have the same access to papyrus as the world of Jerusalem, Judea had. And that was parchment. Parchments are animal skins that have been cleaned and prepared for writing. Now, if you can imagine, using parchment had one basic problem, right? One skin, one animal. So you start to get a sense of the work involved. So, to which we also have to add the fact that, well, we're not sure exactly their literacy rates. How much did people actually read in that day and age? Now, among the Jews, maybe more than others because of the importance of the scripture. So the use of printing materials to disseminate his message was not a realistic option for Jesus. You have to understand the first point to understand the second. Since printed material was expensive and laborious to produce, you would what? You would minimize printing material. The way to do this then is that you memorize material. Jesus did not invent this material. Jesus was a product of his age. If a key way to disseminate information was for people to memorize it, then it would help for what? The material be easy to memorize. On the one hand, this would explain why parables use material from everyday life. Jesus was not expecting and asking people to memorize terms and concepts and ideas that they were not familiar with. People could relate to and understand these things, and this would make memorization easier. The other side of memorization is to keep things short and pithy. Do not give long and extended discourses. So when you look at how the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke are written, notice how the units that make up these Gospels are often very short and pithy. They're not extended like some of the chapters in John and some of the discourses within those chapters. Again, it would make memorization easier. Jesus was a master of working in the day and age he was in to get his message out. Now, the next point we want to pick up on is what we call the radical nature of Jesus's approach to communication. One of the limitations of a book is that it has to be purchased and read to be of value. A book in Jesus' day would not have made Jesus' teaching accessible to many. You have the issue of reading, but the cost of a book. What Jesus did was make it possible for the average person to take his message and spread it. Parables would have allowed the farmers or the merchants to take the message of Jesus to their world. In fact, if you look at the growth of the church in history, throughout history, there is a part of which the church growth is accidental. The church has grown because people have taken it with them. Those were not people who were missionaries. We are talking of those people who are migrants or merchants. The church grows and thrives when the people of church see they have a role in taking the story of the faith into their world. Jesus allowed that, and he still allows it today.